The carriage door slammed shut, and before she could reach the handle again, the lock clicked into place. "Wrong carriage," she gasped, her breath fogging in the cool night air. The man sitting across from her did not look alarmed. He did not even look surprised. He struck a match, and the small flame lit up a sharp, commanding face. Gray eyes, cold, controlled, watching her carefully. "Right one, actually," he said. The carriage lurched forward, but only minutes earlier, Charlotte Bennet had been standing beneath the blazing chandeliers of the Whitmore Mansion ballroom, wishing she could disappear. 300 candles burned in golden tiers above the polished floor. Crystal glasses sparkled. Laughter echoed against high ceilings painted with angels and clouds. Every woman in the room wore silk and diamonds. Every man wore confidence like a second coat. Charlotte felt none of it. She stood near the refreshments table, and her gloved hands gripping a glass of lemonade she had not touched. Her dance card hung from her wrist, nearly full, yet she had never felt more alone. "Miss Bennet," said a voice that made her stomach tighten. "You seem distracted." She forced a smile and turned toward Senator Harold Petty. He was a widower of 45, with neatly combed silver hair and a habit of speaking as though he were giving a speech in Congress. His black suit fit perfectly. His smile did not. "I was listening," Charlotte said politely. "As I was saying," Senator Petty continued, "a household requires discipline. My late wife was too indulgent with the staff. It led to inefficiency, waste, weakness. I will not make the same mistake again." Charlotte's fingers tightened around her glass. He had been courting her for 2 months. Her mother thought him a blessing. Wealthy, influential, respectable. Charlotte thought him exhausting. "And children," he went on, "must be molded early. My son requires firmer guidance. Natural impulses must be corrected before they grow into flaws." His son was 8 years old. Charlotte pictured a small boy sitting too straight at a long dining table, afraid to laugh too loudly. "Children deserve kindness," she said before she could stop herself. Senator Petty's eyes sharpened. "They deserve structure," he corrected. "A wife who understands that would be invaluable." A wife. Her mother stood across the room, watching with hopeful eyes. Aunt Charlotte felt the walls closing in. The music grew louder. The perfume in the air became heavy. Every laugh sounded sharp and false. "I need air," she said quickly. Without waiting for permission, she turned and walked toward the terrace doors. She could feel whispers following her. She did not stop on the terrace. She walked down the steps, past the fountain, past the rose hedges, until the noise of the ball became a distant hum. The night air was cool and honest, but she pressed a hand to her chest. "I will not marry him," she whispered fiercely. "I will not." Voices drifted from the house. "Miss Bennet?" Her mother's voice. Panic shot through her. If she were found wandering alone in the dark, questions would follow. Her reputation could crack like thin glass. A line of carriages stood along the circular drive, horses snorting softly, lanterns glowing. Somewhere among them was her family's carriage. Dark blue, silver trim. Out she hurried toward the row, her slippers crunching over gravel. There, a dark carriage with silver detailing. She did not hesitate. She yanked the door open, gathered her skirts, and slipped inside. She slammed the door shut and leaned back against the velvet seat. "Thank heaven," she breathed. "Good evening," said a low voice from the shadows. Her blood ran cold. The match flared. A lantern was lit. Duke Alexander Hayes sat across from her. Everyone in Boston knew the name. That's the Duke of Ashford, 32 years old, wealth beyond measure. A man who had inherited not only land and title, but tragedy. They called him the Iron Duke. He rarely smiled, rarely danced, rarely lingered. And now she was alone in his carriage. "Wrong carriage," she whispered. He leaned forward and turned the lock with a calm, deliberate click. "Right one, actually." The carriage began to move. "You must stop," she said, reaching for the door handle. "I cannot," he replied smoothly. "I have just escaped a very tiresome evening. I will not return. This is improper. You entered my carriage. It was dark." "Indeed." She stared at him, anger replacing fear. "You are ruining me." His gray eyes studied her face. "Miss Bennet," he said quietly, "if I intended to ruin you, I would not begin this way." Her cheeks burned. He leaned back, stretching long legs with careless ease. "I saw you flee," he added. Senator Petty can drain the life from a room." Despite herself, a short laugh escaped her. "You noticed?" "I notice more than people think." Silence settled between them, broken only by the steady roll of wheels over cobblestones. She studied him now that the lantern light revealed him clearly. Strong jaw, tired eyes, a man holding himself too tightly. "Why were you hiding in your carriage?" she asked. His gaze flickered. "I was not hiding." "You were." A pause. "I required quiet," he admitted. "That ballroom suffocates me." She nodded slowly. "It suffocates me too." The admission hung between them like fragile glass. "We are both running away," she said. His mouth curved faintly. "Perhaps." The carriage slowed. Through the window, she saw a grand townhouse of brick and white columns. Ashford House. "We have arrived," he said. Her heart pounded again. You cannot mean to take me inside." "I have already sent for my aunt," he replied calmly. "She will act as chaperone. Your reputation will remain intact." She blinked. "You planned this?" "I plan most things." He stepped down and offered his hand. After one brief hesitation, she placed her fingers in his. His grip was warm and steady. Inside, he led her through a side entrance and up a quiet staircase to a large library filled with books from floor to ceiling. "Wait here," he said. My aunt will arrive shortly." When he left, Charlotte walked slowly around the room. This was not a showpiece library. The books were worn, marked, used. Poetry, history, agriculture, law. A half-written letter rested on the desk. The Duke returned without his coat, sleeves slightly rolled. "You read?" she asked, before thinking. "Constantly." "That surprises me." "Why?" "I was told you dislike society." "I dislike performance," he corrected. Yet he poured 2 small glasses of sherry and handed one to her. She hesitated. "My aunt drinks more than I do," he said dryly. She accepted it. "Why do they call you the Iron Duke?" she asked. He held her gaze. "Because I do not bend." "Everyone bends," she said softly. Something moved in his eyes. "You speak boldly." "I am tired of pretending." Before he could answer, footsteps approached. A tall, older woman swept into the room. "Alec," she said sharply. What have you done?" "Aunt Margaret," he said smoothly. "May I present Miss Charlotte Bennet?" Aunt Margaret's eyes softened immediately. "My dear, you look terrified. Sit down. Tell me everything." And Charlotte did. The ball, the senator, the carriage. Aunt Margaret listened, then patted her hand. "You will stay the night in my guest room. Tomorrow we will tell your parents you felt unwell and came here under my care." Charlotte looked at the Duke. "Thank you," she said quietly, and he inclined his head. "I am not the villain society believes me to be." Later, as Aunt Margaret led her upstairs, Charlotte glanced back. The Duke stood by the dying fire, watching her. There was something in his eyes she could not name. Not coldness, not iron. Something else. Something almost like loneliness. She slept little that night, and in her dreams, she heard again the sound of the lock turning and his calm voice saying, "Right one, actually." Charlotte returned home the next morning with Aunt Margaret at her side and a carefully arranged story about dizziness and poor ventilation at the Whitmore ball. Her mother accepted the explanation with visible relief. Her father asked fewer questions than usual, but his thoughtful eyes lingered on her face longer than before. The senator sent flowers. Charlotte sent them back. Meant 3 days passed. She told herself she would forget the Duke of Ashford. Their meeting had been an accident, a strange, reckless interruption in the orderly path her life was expected to follow. Yet she could not forget the way he had looked at her in the carriage, not as a decoration, not as a prize, but as a person. On the 4th afternoon, a cream envelope arrived. "Miss Charlotte Bennet, I find myself in need of intelligent company. Should you be willing, I would be honored if you would take tea with me this Thursday at 4 o'clock. My nephew will not be present. Margaret Hayes." Charlotte read the note twice. Her heart beat faster at the words, "My nephew will not be present." She told herself she accepted for Aunt Margaret. The older woman had been kind, wise, refreshingly honest. She was not hoping to see the Duke again. She was lying. Tea with Aunt Margaret was warm and lively. The older woman spoke openly of society's nonsense, of political scandals, of books Charlotte had read, and opinions she rarely dared to share aloud. "You think too deeply for this city," Aunt Margaret said with a knowing smile. "It makes people uncomfortable. I do not mean to." "Of course you do," she replied gently. "You simply refuse to shrink." Charlotte laughed, and for the first time in weeks, she felt understood. As she stepped out onto the sidewalk afterward, a carriage stopped in front of Ashford House. The Duke stepped down, but he saw her at the same moment she saw him. For a second, neither moved. Then he inclined his head slightly. She did the same. No words, but something passed between them. Recognition. The world shifted again. A week later, Charlotte's father called her into his study. "Senator Petty has renewed his interest," he said carefully. Her spine straightened. "I will not marry him." Her father studied her for a long moment. "I hoped you would say that." She blinked. "I did not build my business from nothing so that my daughter could live a small life," he said quietly. "You deserve more than comfort. You deserve happiness." Tears filled her eyes. "I met someone," she admitted softly. Her father's brows lifted. The Duke. Silence. Then, slowly, a smile. "He is not an easy man. I know. Do you love him?" "I do not know," she whispered. "But I cannot stop thinking about him." Her father nodded. "Well, then find out." Opportunity came sooner than she expected. Aunt Margaret invited her to a country gathering at Thornfield Manor, neighboring the Duke's estate, Ashford Hall. Charlotte knew before she accepted that he would be there. The countryside was wide and golden when they arrived. Ashford Hall rose from rolling hills like something carved from history itself. He stood on the terrace, speaking with the host when she first saw him. Wind caught his dark hair, but he laughed at something the Baron said. The sight stole her breath. At dinner that night, they were seated across from one another. Lady Caroline Forsyth, a beautiful widow with sharp eyes, claimed the chair beside him. Charlotte told herself she did not care. She was lying again. Once their eyes met over candlelight. His expression was controlled, but something burned beneath it. Later, Charades were suggested, marked through careful arranging that Charlotte suspected was Aunt Margaret's doing. She and the Duke were paired together. "You must find this amusing," she said quietly as they waited for their turn. "I find it dangerous," he replied. "Why?" "Because I enjoy your company more than I should." Her heart skipped. The game began. They worked in perfect rhythm, guessing clues before the other finished acting them. They won. They laughed. And for a few moments he forgot to be iron. Afterward, they stepped onto the moonlit terrace for air. "You should keep your distance from me," he said, without looking at her. "Why?" "Because I will not survive losing again." The words struck her. "Losing what?" He hesitated. "My fiancée," he said at last. 10 years ago. She left me the night before our wedding, with my younger brother." Charlotte felt the air leave her lungs. "They died in a carriage accident on the road to New York," he continued quietly. "Everyone blamed them, and I blamed myself. You were not responsible for her choices. I was not enough." His voice broke slightly. "I decided after that I would never give anyone the power to hurt me again. And yet you helped me," she said softly. "That was different." "Was it?" He turned toward her fully now. "You look at me as though I am not broken." "You are wounded," she corrected gently. "That is not the same." Silence stretched between them. "You deserve someone safe," he said. "Someone who has not built walls." Safe is not the same as right. A muscle in his jaw tightened. "You do not know what you are asking." "Then tell me." He stepped back as though distance alone could save him. "I care for you," he said finally. "More than I intended. And that is precisely why this must end." Her heart clenched. "You cannot decide that alone." "I can, and I have." He walked back inside, leaving her alone, beneath the stars. The next day brought humiliation. During a gathering in the drawing room, Charlotte confronted him quietly, desperate for honesty. Instead, he turned cold. "You mistake courtesy for affection," he said loudly enough for others to hear. "I am not the hero of your imagination." The room fell silent. Heat flashed to her face. Lady Caroline smiled faintly. Charlotte stood very still. "I understand," she said calmly, though her heart was splintering. "I apologize for misunderstanding your intentions." She left with dignity, but she cried behind closed doors. That night, Aunt Margaret found her. "He is afraid," the older woman said gently. "He hurt me." "Yes, because he believes he will hurt you worse if he allows himself to love you." Charlotte stared at her. "Love? He has not spoken of another woman in 10 years, Aunt Margaret said. "Until you." The next morning, Senator Petty arrived at Thornfield Manor. He requested a private word. "I believe now is an appropriate time to formalize our understanding," he said stiffly. "We have no understanding," Charlotte replied firmly. "You cannot be serious." "I am." The Duke stepped into the room at that moment. "The lady has spoken," he said evenly. "This is not your concern," the senator snapped. "It is," the Duke replied quietly. Charlotte looked between them. Her heart pounded. The senator left in anger. Silence remained. 5 minutes, the Duke said to her. Please." She followed him into the garden. He faced her as though preparing for battle. "I was cruel," he said, "because I was afraid." "Of what?" "Of loving you." The words were raw. "I convinced myself I'd destroy everything I care about," he continued. "I thought if I pushed you away now, you would be spared later." She stepped closer. "You do not destroy. You protect." His gray eyes burned. "I love you," he said at last. "And that terrifies me. Tears filled her eyes. I love you too." He pulled her into his arms and kissed her like a man who had waited 10 years to breathe again. And in that moment, the iron began to melt. For a long moment, they stood in the garden, breathless and shaken, as though the world itself had shifted beneath their feet. "I do not know how to do this," Alexander admitted, his voice rough. "I do not know how to love without fear." "Then we will learn," Charlotte said gently, "together." He searched her face as if still waiting for her to disappear. "I may retreat," he warned. "I may grow cold when I am frightened, and I may argue when you try to push me away," she replied softly, "but I will not leave." Something inside him broke open. That afternoon, they returned to the house hand in hand. Aunt Margaret pretended not to notice, though her eyes shone with triumph. Charlotte's parents were summoned the next day. Her father listened quietly as Alexander spoke, his posture straight, but his voice honest. "I cannot promise perfection," he said, "but I can promise loyalty, devotion, and respect. Your daughter has shown me what courage looks like. I will spend my life deserving her." Her father studied him for a long moment. "Love her well," he said simply. "That is all I require." They were married within a month at Ashford Hall. The ceremony was small, held in the chapel overlooking the rolling Massachusetts hills. Charlotte wore cream silk and a spray of late summer roses in her hair. Alexander watched her walk down the aisle as though he had been given something impossible. When the minister declared them husband and wife, he kissed her with quiet reverence. For the first time in a decade, he looked like a man at peace. Their married life did not soften Charlotte. It strengthened her. She learned the rhythms of Ashford Hall, the needs of the estate, the staff, the tenants. She spoke her mind at dinner. She debated with her husband over politics and poetry, and he listened. In private, Alexander was not iron at all. He was thoughtful, intense, fiercely protective. At night, he spoke of his fears without shame. He told her about the brother he had lost, the guilt he had carried, the years he had lived half alive, and she held him through every confession. "You are not broken," she would whisper. "You are healing." And slowly, he believed her. 3 months after their wedding, unexpected news arrived. The daughter of a former estate worker had passed away from illness, leaving behind a newborn son with no family willing to claim him. Alexander read the letter in silence. "He has no one," he said quietly. Charlotte stepped closer. "Then we will be his someone." He looked at her, startled. "You would take him in?" "Yes," without hesitation. The baby arrived 2 days later. He was small and red-faced and loud. Charlotte held him carefully, instinctively, and the crying stopped. Alexander watched her with wonder. "What shall we call him?" she asked. "Thomas," he said softly. They adopted him formally the following spring. Society whispered. Let them whisper. Thomas grew strong and steady, with Charlotte's stubborn chin and Alexander's thoughtful eyes. And something miraculous happened. The Iron Duke began to laugh. He laughed when Thomas crawled across important documents. He laughed when Charlotte scolded him for working too late. He laughed in the gardens his mother had once designed. The estate changed too. Charlotte helped redesign parts of the gardens. She opened a school for tenant children. She insisted the servants dine properly during holidays. Alexander supported every idea. You are transforming this house," he told her one evening. "No," she replied, resting her head against his shoulder. "We are." 2 years later, Charlotte placed a newborn daughter into his arms. Rose. Alexander wept openly. "I never thought I would have this," he whispered. Then you were wrong, Charlotte smiled. They went on to welcome more children over the years. A lively household filled Ashford Hall with noise and laughter and muddy footprints. But Thomas grew into a serious young man, proud to bear the Ashford name. Rose inherited her mother's fire. Their younger children filled every corner of the house with chaos and joy. The Iron Duke became simply Alexander. He played with his children in the grass. He read bedtime stories in the library that had once been silent and lonely. He held Charlotte's hand at every gathering without shame. One autumn evening, many years later, they stood together on the terrace watching their family race across the lawn. "Do you remember?" Charlotte asked softly. "The carriage?" He smiled. "Yes." He laughed quietly. "I thought that night I was escaping a suffocating ballroom. And instead, I was running straight toward my future." She leaned into him. "I truly thought I had made a terrible mistake." "You did," he teased gently. "You entered the wrong carriage." She looked up at him. "And you locked the door." "Right one," he said, brushing a kiss across her forehead. "Actually." Below them, their children's laughter echoed across the hills. Above them, the sky turned gold with sunset. Charlotte had once feared being trapped in a life chosen for her. Instead, she had chosen love, chosen courage, chosen a man who believed he was made of iron and showed him he was made of something far stronger. And Alexander, who once believed he would die alone and unloved, that stood surrounded by the proof that he had been wrong, the wrong carriage, the right life, and a love that neither of them had planned, but both had fought for, and neither would ever let go.